Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're calling the Truckee Town Council meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Zabriskie.
Here.
Councilmember Pallavi.
Here.
Councilmember Romack.
Here.
Vice Mayor Henderson.
Here.
And Mayor Klostad.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'll all join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Before we move on to some really fun topics tonight, including a lovely presentation from our students here in the audience, I do want to take a moment to pause in reflection. As individuals and as a community, we are holding space for Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who lost their lives during recent immigration and customs enforcement actions. They were standing up for their neighbors and community members, showing out of care, solidarity, and a belief in the rule of law. The violence extended to them and other actions from ICE have sparked grief, concern, and tremendous uncertainty. And we have a call for accountability. So I would like to invite us all to take a brief moment of silence in recognition of their courage, in the value of every human life, no matter what country you were born in, and the importance of humanity and compassion and how we engage with one another. Thank you all for joining us in that. It's moments like this that remind us that community is so much more than an abstract idea. It's something we choose through our actions. And I'm really happy to have the actions that you're choosing to share with us tonight. But I do want to let the community know that just today, the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District sent out an updated information on Senate Bill 98 that provides protection of our students and staff when they're on a TTUSD campus. It also covers how parents will be notified if there's any ICE activity on any campuses. That information can be found on their website. And while no incidents have occurred in our region, we just want the community to be assured that we are planning and preparing and making sure that we are doing everything we can to protect our students, staff, and our community at large. Because in Truckee, we have a deep and long history of standing up for and protecting one another, even when we may not agree. And so my hope is that we can carry that spirit forward with compassion and with a commitment to seeing the humanity in one another at all times. So thank you, everybody. And with that, we'll move on to general public comment. And this is an opportunity for the community to speak to the council on any items that are not currently agendized for the evening. Is there anybody that would like to make a general public comment? Okay, seeing none. We're going to move on to our presentations. And our first presentation is the Great Kindness Challenge of Kings Beach Elementary. So I believe we have a presentation. Yes, join us. No, green light.
Now
there
we're
you
on.
go.
Fantastic. Before I get started, I'd like my staff to stand up in honor and recognition of all of our teachers here tonight. Thank you. Yes, they are the bedrock of the community. Okay, my name's Jenny DeWald. I'm the principal at Kings Beach Elementary. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for having us tonight. This week, our school is participating in the Great Kindness Challenge, a global week-long celebration of kindness taking place January 26th to January 30th of 2026. It brings together more than 22 million students worldwide, all working towards the same goal: spreading kindness and building stronger, more connected communities. During this week, students complete meaningful, age-appropriate acts of kindness designed to foster compassion, promote inclusion, and create a positive school climate. We are very proud to be part of this global effort. Tonight, our students would like to share some of the kindness actions they are taking, both at school and throughout our community. So, muy buenas noches. Gracias por darnos la bienvenida esta noche. Soy Jenny DeWall, la directora de la escuela primaria Kings Beach. Esta semana nuestra escuela está participando en el gran desafío de la amabilidad, una celebración mundial de una semana dedicada a la amabilidad que se lleva a cabo del 26 al 30 de enero de 2026. Reúne a más de 22 millones de estudiantes de todo el mundo, todos trabajando hacia el mismo objetivo: difundir la amabilidad y construir comunidades más fuertes y conectadas. Durante esta semana, los estudiantes realizan actos de amabilidad significativos para su edad. Promover la inclusión y crear un clima escolar positivo. Nos sentimos muy orgullosos de formar parte de este esfuerzo global. Esta noche, nuestros estudiantes desean compartir algunas de las acciones de amabilidad que están llevando a cabo tanto en la escuela como en toda nuestra comunidad. And so now we get to invite some special little people up. If you guys all want to come up, I think Miss Maisie is going to be first. Okay, let's get this the right. Yeah. How's that? 10 fingers up there.
Good.
Is that good? You got it, girl.
Every day during recess, we have a thank you card table. Students can write cards to classmates and staff to say thank you and show appreciation. Todos los días durante el recreo tenemos una mesa con tarjetas de agradecimiento. Los alumnos pueden escribir tarjetas a sus compañeros y al personal para darles las gracias y mostrar su agradecimiento. On Monday, we write kind messages on coffee cup sleeves and we deliver them to Treehouse Cafe so our customers can have a kind message with their coffee. El lunes escribimos mensajes positivos en fundas para vasos de café. Los llevamos a Treehouse Cafe para que los clientes pudiéramos recibir un mensaje amable. con su café. On Tuesday, we are creating a gratitude heart tree. Students write something they are thankful for about a staff member and add it to the tree. El martes estamos creando un árbol de gratitud. Los alumnos escriben algo por lo que están agradecidos de un miembro de personal y lo añaden al árbol. Tomorrow, students with special educational needs will want a beverage cart. They will deliver coffee, tea, and hot chocolate to teachers. This helps students practice communication, social, and jobs skills. It also allows them to participate in school activities while working towards their individual learning goals. Mañana los alumnos con necesidades educativas especiales se encargarán de un carrito de bebidas, servirán café, té y chocolate caliente a los profesores. Esto les ayuda a practicar habilidades comunicativas, sociales y laborales. También les permite participar en las actividades escolares mientras trabajan para alcanzar sus metas de aprendizaje individuales. Also, tomorrow Maisie, our school therapy dog, will be visiting. She helps students feel calm and happy, and she loves receiving kindness from everyone. Mañana vendrá a visitarnos Maisie, nuestra perra de terapia escolar. Ella ayuda a los alumnos a sentirse tranquilos y felices, y le encanta recibir el cariño de todos. On Wednesday, we'll set up an affirmation trial. Students will see messages like "You matter" and "Be kind today," along with drawings and high fives. El miércoles los padres preparan un camino de la afirmación. Los alumnos verán mensajes como "Tú importas" y "Ser amable hoy", junto con dibujos, y choco esos 5. On Thursday, parents will lead a kindness scavenger hunt. Challenges include inviting someone new to play or saying something positive to a friend. El jueves, los padres organizarán una búsqueda del tesoro. Los desafíos incluyen invitar a alguien nuevo a jugar o decir algo positivo a un amigo. On Friday, students and parents will create a kindness mural in our cafeteria using origami to form a word about kindness. This week in music, we are singing songs about kindness and empathy. In STEAM class, we are creating projects that represent kindness. El viernes, los alumnos y los padres crearán un mural sobre la bondad en nuestra cafetería utilizando origami para formar una palabra relacionada con la amabilidad. Esta semana en la clase de música cantaremos canciones sobre amabilidad y empatía. En la clase de arte y STEAM creemos proyectos que representan la bondad.
We are ending the week with a family movie night at school. This brings our families together and helps strengthen our community. Tenemos la semana con una noche de cine familiar en la escuela. Esto une a nosotras familias y ayuda a fortalecer nuestra comunidad. We are creating a calendar with photos of our kindness activities. It will be sold next school year to inspire kindness all year long. The money raised will support our Parent-Teacher Association. Estamos creando un calendario con fotos de nuestras actividades. Estará a la venta el próximo año escolar para inspirar a la bondad durante todo el año. El dinero recuerdo será destinado a apoyar a nuestra asociación de padres y maestros. Today, our cooking club made carrot cupcakes from scratch. We brought them to share with you as a thank you do for everything you do to our community. Hoy nuestro club de cocina ha preparado pastelitos de zanahoria desde cero. Los hemos traído para compartirlos con ustedes como agradecimiento por todo lo que hacen por nuestra comunidad.
Okay, and a quick close. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share how we are spreading kindness. We believe that small acts can make a big difference. And we are grateful to be part of a community that supports compassion and connection. We leave with our future little one, Victoria, a bilingual TK student. Give me 1 second, Victoria, who's going to be giving away some treats for you. So gracias por darnos la oportunidad de compartir cómo estamos difundiendo la bondad. Creemos que los pequeños gestos pueden marcar una gran diferencia y estamos agradecidos de formar parte de una comunidad que apoya la compasión y la conexión. Nos despedimos con nuestra futura generación Victoria, estudiante bilingüe de TK, con señora Logan, repartiendo algo dulce. Gracias por todo.
Oh, we're a little high up here. If you want to come around back, you're welcome to. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria. Okay, so we get to also recognize Kat Sultamarad and Romy, you're the one that has put this all together. Okay, if you would, please, can you come and introduce yourselves, ladies? Please. As a supplement to this great act of kindness, this is our TTUSD Nutrition and Food Services Department.
Thank you, everyone. And I want to say we provide the resources, Romy and I, to Maestra Bruna, who has came up with the idea of the culinary classes. This is year 2, and we support that. And Chef Marisol here teaches the classes every evening. And our operations manager, Romy Bronje, is a miracle worker. She's everywhere. So she brings all the dots together.
No, she's. Yeah, my name is Romina Brangi, and I'm the operation manager for the food services at the school district.
My name is Marisol Cardona, and I'm the chef to the school, to the little school, and I'm so happy to be part of this family, and that's it.
Thank you all so much. Normally we go through all the presentations and then we do public comment, but we're going to do it a little bit out of order this time. So do any fellow council members wish to make any comment on this presentation before I open it up to the public?
Well, thank you for your presentation, and nos encantaron todas sus presentaciones a todos nosotros que sentamos aquí.
Well, let us go through public comment, and then we'll come and we'll join you in front. Does that sound good? Okay, great. We would love to get a picture with kids.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. You all are our future leaders, your future teachers, your future firefighters, maybe future elected officials. And I feel so confident that our future is bright, that our world is going to be kinder, more compassionate, and more inclusive because of what you all do every day. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here and for sharing with us. Thank you to all of the teachers, the staff, and especially to all of you for bringing acts of kindness to everyone and doing it
Councilmember Romack?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson. Agree with everything you said, and just thank you to everyone. I have a kindergartner at Kings Beach who's over there too, so it's been fun to hear about all the different kindness activities all week. And congrats to all of you students. I'm so impressed with how well you spoke, and everybody can speak in both languages, which is something I cannot do, unlike Councilmember Zabriskie. But thank you guys for all coming tonight and sharing your message of kindness throughout our community.
I just sampled my cupcake and it is really, really, really delicioso. So thank you very much. And thank you all for being here, and I'm glad you guys make it.
Yeah, we don't often get these great interactions of kindness, and especially in our challenging time of today, it is greatly needed and appreciated. So thank you for all that you are doing. Would any members of the public like to come and speak on this presentation? You would have 3 minutes if you so choose. Okay, seeing none, we are going to take a brief refreshment break. We do have some refreshments in the back. We would love to get photos with all the kids, and then we do have some small little gifts for each of you, a reflection of our appreciation for all that you're doing for our community. So after the photos, I'll meet you in the back and we'll distribute our little goodie bags. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
We're still so depends on the site, depends on the field. More units is better. But there's a lot of yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll bring this meeting back to order and continue on with our presentations. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with that brief intermission. Okay, but I don't have the other presentation items. Give me a moment. Sure. Thank you. Okay, 5.2, yeah. Visit Truckee, Tahoe, and Carissa, you're going to go ahead and start this off. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Carissa Binkley, Economic Vitality Program Analyst, and I'm here to introduce Visit Truckee Tahoe, or as we call them, VTT. Visit Truckee Tahoe serves as the Owners Association for the Truckee Business Improvement District and is the town's destination marketing and management organization. This evening, Jackie Calvert, Executive Director of Visit Truckee Tahoe, will provide a brief overview drawn from VTT's annual report, which is anticipated to come before you formally next month. Staff felt it would be helpful for Council to hear from VTT tonight to provide broader context ahead of future discussions. No direction or discussion from Council is requested tonight, and with that, I will turn it over to Jackie Calvert, Executive Director of Visit Truckee Tahoe.
Thank you, Carissa, for the intro. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you so much for having me. Jackie Calvert, the new Executive Director with Visit Truckee Tahoe. And I'm joined here by our one other staff member, Tracy Weingard, and our board staff. And we are so excited and honored to be shepherding this new and next era of sustainable tourism for our community. So we'll just get right into it. Oh, now it's working. Okay, thank you. We believe that tourism must be a powerful force for good. When managed correctly, it is a tool that enhances our environment, creates opportunity for our local workforce, and funds the services that make our quality of life possible. Our board and staff are dedicated to a sustainable growth model where every visitor trip contributes meaningfully back to this town. Tonight, we'll share how we are turning that vision into reality and why restoring our capacity is the vital next step. So when people kind of think about tourism, it can often manifest in conversations around, traffic on Donner Pass Road or, lines at your favorite coffee shop. But there is another side to that story. And so I'd like you to think about the last storm that we had a couple weeks ago now at this point, but we're hoping for more. And you saw those snowplows clearing your street so you could get to work. Or the last time you took your dog for a walk on the well-maintained Legacy Trail. In a very real way, a visitor paid for that. In 2025, visitors paid $13.7 million in total taxes. Without them, every household in Truckee would pay an additional $2,078 annually to maintain current services. But it goes deeper than just our tax bills. Look around your own neighborhood. Chances are your neighbor's livelihood does depend on tourism. Even the hospital, the #1 employer in our area, relies on tourism. 36% of their patients are from outside of the area. And those jobs generate real earnings for our local workforce, money that is then spent right back here in our local shops and restaurants. And I think we can all agree that we do have some exceptional world-class dining and shopping here in Truckee. And in a lot of ways, this is possible because of our visitors. These businesses could not sustain on our locals alone. Okay, so let's look at the hard numbers of our overnight visitor economy. Overnight lodging guests generated $7.4 million in TOT, which does remain Truckee's third largest revenue source. This engine supports over 1,600 jobs and puts $63.7 million into local wages. Our priority is ensuring this overnight lodging engine runs sustainably, because we know that these lodging guests spend 6 times more than the day visitor. it is important to recognize that the market has matured. We are currently in a post-peak normalization. After the unprecedented pandemic surge, gross lodging revenue is stabilizing and is currently roughly about 8% below the record highs that we saw in 22-23. And this 8% normalization then translates to $650,000 in decline for TOT, highlighting that when our lodging market softens, the funding for our community's top priorities, from workforce housing to local transit, is directly impacted. We are no longer in an era of growth. We are in a competitive environment that requires sophisticated management to maintain our market share without overwhelming our community during peak periods. And while the market is normalizing, our organizational capacity is shrinking. Since the lodging peak, our program budget, the dollars that we actually spend on stewardship and marketing, it has declined by 40%. And we have absorbed these cuts quietly, but we have reached a breaking point where we can no longer meet the demands expected of us at our current funding levels. Our strategy is intentionally focused on quality over volume. We are not looking for more visitors, we are looking for better visitors. And our plan aligns directly with Council's goals: economic vitality, environmental sustainability, and enhanced communication. Our new brand helps support this strategy by signaling who we are and who we're for. We invite those that share our values of stewardship and community to experience this special place responsibly. And we are being extremely intentional with our visitor attraction. We are using sophisticated ways to find high-value, eco-conscious visitors who are inclined to shop at our stores, eat at our restaurants, and respect our trails. This is precision-managed tourism that maximizes economic benefit. Our top-performing segments to date have been eco-friendly and sustainable travelers, really proving that we are successful at attracting visitors who share our same values. And since day one, the majority of our resources have targeted the times that Truckee needs overnight visitors the most. 66% of our media spend this year is dedicated to the shoulder seasons of spring and fall. All press trips, influencer visits, our sponsored events are intentionally scheduled during off-peak windows to support our locals without worsening those peak period congestions. And with new analytic tools this year that we've invested in, we can see we have made meaningful progress in fall, with occupancy slightly up year over year for September through mid-November. This year, we conducted a resident sentiment survey to better understand our community's feelings on tourism. And we were pleased to see that 87% of respondents agree that tourism does benefit the local economy. And on the flip side, 81% do say quality of life worsens during peak seasons. We know that this can be a real downside. However, when we asked how to manage tourism levels, 35%, the majority, believe that we should maintain levels but spread to low season. For the first 5 years of the organization, 1 out of every $4 we have spent has been dedicated directly to stewardship programs. That includes investments in TART Connect, Truckee Trails, Truckee Donner Land Trust, TDMA, and the Truckee River Watershed Council, just to name a few. And when you actually look at our total program dollars, it's about 35%. With our declining operational capacity, this has limited our ability to maintain direct stewardship funding. But the Sustainable Truckee gift card continues to be a driving force. We actively promote these gift cards. Hopefully you've used them or seen them around town to drive lodging bookings during shoulder seasons, converting visitor demand into both local economic benefit and stewardship funding. Year to date, we've seen $200,000 in sales and a 38% increase year over year. And as we look ahead, our goal is to protect the momentum we've built for these stewardship programs. While we are very proud of these results, we must reckon with the needs of our lodging payers as we enter this period of visitation stabilization. To keep our community priorities funded, destination management must evolve. We need to ensure we have the resources to keep attracting the high-value guests who enable us to make this stewardship possible. So this year, our efforts have moved away from hard program dollars to the power of storytelling, what we think, really good at. Like our all-new visitor map with a section dedicated to visiting like a pro, working with the TNT TMA group to create materials for hotel front desks to ensure all guests are aware of the ski resort shuttles that we have here in town. Our content investments to support Truckee Mountain Filter. Thank you, Mayor, for your time on that one, or Tart Connect. And lastly, we've been heavily involved in our regional Lake Tahoe Destination Stewardship Council, where I've personally worked alongside the ED and their creative agency to get the Tahoe Ethos project off. It's really an effort to just better support better behavior, better experience, and better outcomes for our visitors and our residents. And it's been 2 years in the making, and we're very excited to get it over the finish line. And I think it's been great to have Truckee take a larger seat at that table. So from a positioning standpoint, we do have a lot going for us. We've got world-class ski resorts, lakes, rivers, mountain adventure, charm. But so do our competitors. Lake Tahoe, Mammoth, Aspen, Park City, they too are after the same sustainably minded visitor that we target with a lot more dollars to stand out. When we look at the funding these other destinations have, we can see that Truckee is an outlier in the bottom 11% of California tourism funding. Look at outside of our region, or even right here in Tahoe, we rank among the lowest. And I want to be clear where we stand. 1.25% to support a destination management organization is not competitive. We are attempting to manage a world-class destination on a fraction of the resources our competitors use. Restoring our T-bid rate to 2% is a return to the baseline required to keep our economic engine running. Council, it is important to remember that when a visitor stays in Truckee, over 90% of those tax dollars go directly to the town. We voluntarily reduced the T-bid in 2021 to ensure Measure K passed, creating a dedicated stream for workforce housing, a priority we continue to champion. But as the lodging market matures and competition from our neighbors intensifies, our capacity to meet the expectations of our stakeholders and community are not where they should be. And here's the reality: the messaging, the attracting the right visitors, and the materials to educate a visitor, how to use a bear box, how to engage in public transportation. That costs real dollars. And this restoration is paid 100% by overnight visitors with zero cost to our residents. It is simply the fuel needed to ensure this system continues to be a powerful force for good. So what can we do with 2%? Increased funding would allow us to expand stewardship programs and really look at programs like B-Cycle, investing in visitor education resources, or supporting the newly revisited airport shuttle from Reno. Grow shoulder season event support to drive off-peak visitation. Maintain year-round values-based targeting to attract the right visitors. And develop the meetings and groups market to support hotel inventory and lodging partner priorities. Managed tourism also means ensuring that our lodging assets are used efficiently. And before we jump into the STR segment of this presentation, we want to acknowledge the town's STR team. Since 2021, since the ordinance was put into effect, the neighborhood complaints are down by 90%. That is a true testament to that team's dedication and hard work to get us here. And the 2025 STR report was also incredibly thorough and informative. And within that report, it revealed the ordinance has inadvertently created a stagnation trap. According to town data, 222 permitted homes, nearly 18% of our inventory, reported $0 in revenue in 2024. These owners are holding on to permits as placeholders to avoid a 16-plus month wait list, while 268 people remain locked out of the program. And this inactivity has a real fiscal cost. It leaves nearly $1 million in annual TOT that is specifically mandated for workforce housing and local services on the table. But more importantly, it creates trickle-down impact for our local businesses, as those inactive homes translate into $7.2 million installed local spending for our grocery stores, restaurants, and shops. We're also seeing economic leakage from our vacation rental economy. When less homes become utilized, this trickles down to our small businesses like property managers, who have seen their inventory decrease as much as 50%. And they too employ full-time local staff and contract out with the hot tub mechanics, the landscaper, the electrician, and so much more. So today, we hope tonight that we've proven that tourism can be an effective community tool, and when managed with precision, fuels the services we rely on. We aren't here asking for more tourism. We are asking for the capacity to manage it effectively and sustainably. By restoring our TBIG capacity to 2%, we move Truckee from being a vulnerable regional player back into a position of leadership, with the resources to protect our backyard and attract the visitors when we need them. Simultaneously, we ask that you consider adding STR optimization to your work plan. Together, we can strengthen TOT and Measure K reliability through better utilization, ensuring existing permits are working to support our community. Thank you, and we look forward to the plan ahead. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jackie.
And just as a reminder, this overview was intended to provide helpful background and context for council ahead of future conversations. This item is for informational purposes only tonight, and no discussion or direction from council is requested this evening. The Visit Truckee Tahoe annual report is anticipated to return to you formally next month for consideration.
Thank you, Carissa. Okay, and now Lynn Gardner is going to give us an update on our housing program results.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. I am here to update you and the public about the results of the Town of Truckee Housing Program. As a reminder, the goal of Truckee's housing program is to strengthen our community economy and the environment by increasing the inventory of homes our local workers can afford to rent and buy. The town has a number of existing programs and policies in place that aim to facilitate production and preservation of housing for a variety of income levels, up to 245% of the area median income. Revenue to support these programs come from the Town General Fund, Measure K, and grants. First, I'm going to give you an overview of the results of all of our housing programs combined. Then I will highlight results for several individual programs. Since 2020, Truckee's housing program has preserved 96 units, a combination of rentals and purchased homes, converted 252 units into long-term rentals that were previously underutilized, and supported the creation of 27 accessory dwelling units through financial incentives. The housing program has housed 870 locals, including 639 local workers. Local workers are employees or business owners who work a minimum of 20 hours per week within the boundaries of the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District. Our housing programs not only help Truckee residents find affordable housing, they also support our local business and economy. 292 different local employers have workers who've used one or more town housing programs. Program participants are employed in a wide range of industries. Recreation and food and beverage services top the list, but our programs are also supporting educators, healthcare providers, and the construction industry, among many others. Many participants have multiple local jobs. We've identified 677 local jobs among the 639 local employees. These charts show the employer industry percentage by the local employees, and also the employers that have the most employees using our housing programs. Lack of safe, stable, and affordable housing is an issue throughout the Truckee-Tahoe region, and our solutions need to be regional as well. Truckee works with other local governments, agencies, and nonprofits to align our housing programs as much as possible. While the homes supported by Truckee's housing programs must be within the Town of Truckee limits, workers at employers within the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District qualify for our housing programs, which is also true for Nevada and Placer County's programs as well. This chart shows the percentage of participants in our housing programs based on the location of the work sites for the qualified employees. Nevada County, Placer County, and Truckee on these lists mean that there is a physical location within that, that region, and Nevada County means the unincorporated parts of Nevada County. Regional means they either don't have a specific physical location but serve within the boundaries. So many construction workers, contractors, cleaning companies, or they have multiple sites within the TTUSD boundary and may work at multiple sites. It's like employees of the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District or Tahoe Forest. As you can see, Truckee employees are the biggest user of our program, followed by Placer County and Regional as well. Last year, Council requested that we develop a resource to communicate our housing accomplishments with the public, and so we now have a housing accomplishment dashboard live on the website. If you visit townoftruckee.gov/housing, the dashboard is linked at the bottom of the side menu, and it's a very tiny screenshot, but you can see it's up there now. So first off, I'm going to highlight the accessory dwelling unit incentive programs. So the town's ADU program increases the inventory of affordable homes by supporting the development of ADUs through grants, loans, and technical assistance. So far, we've awarded 44 financial incentives, which includes 36 mini grants and 8 loans, 6 forgivable ones that are funded through town dollars, and 2 state-funded low-interest loans. We have had 27 town-supported ADU projects complete, and these are the ones that are just supported with financial incentives. Obviously, the many, many ADUs that are being completed are being supported by our building and planning staff. So the Truckee Home Access Program preserves and protects homes to create places for people who work full-time in the Truckee region to live locally. It pays buyers, sellers, and local businesses to reserve homes for income-qualified local workers using a 55-year deed restriction. So far, we've deed restricted 31 homes since 2022, 30 individuals, and 1 local business. This has housed 77 locals with 40 local employees. The median home price of a THAP home is under $700,000, while Truckee's median home price is currently $1.3 million. The average area median income of a THAP home purchaser is 157% of AMI, while the range is 106 to 237. So you can see that while THAP buyers can go all the way up to 245% of the median income, the average is much closer to 150, 160. And we've helped people all the way down to very close to the median income purchase a home. The average payment per THAP home is just under $111,000. And so far in THAP payments, we've spent about $3.4 million. Lease to Locals is one of our rental programs that unlocks existing housing stock for the local workforce by offering incentives to property owners who convert their properties into long-term rentals and rent to income-qualified local workers. So far, we've converted 252 homes, housing 626 locals. 482 of those are local employees. The average Lease to Locals rent is $2,561 per month, while the market rent is closer to $5,000 a month. The household income for Lease to Local users is about 44% AMI, and this is using the calculation that is the average adult tenant, not the typical state AMI that we do a slightly different calculation for our rental programs. And then the incentive payment is a little under $8,000 per unit, and we spent just under $2 million total on this program. Rooted Renters is one of our newer housing programs. It just launched in 2024. It locks in workforce rental units at below market rate prices for 3 years by providing financial incentives to property owners. So far, we've preserved 65 homes, housing 163 locals. 112 of those are local employees. The average Rooted Renters rent is a little under $2,500. Well, again, the average is around $5,000. The household income for Rooted Renters is around $75,000 with the average AMI of 55%. And while the incentive payment for Rooted Renters, they get a payment each year that they participate in the program. So it's around $7,500 per unit per year. And we haven't spent all of this out because we're only in year 2 of the program, but we've allocated just under $1.5 million in incentive payments through this program. We have a few other housing programs currently that I'm not going to go into detail on. We have the short-term rental token program, homegrown housing, Cal Home and Begin, down payment assistance programs. And while not a program, we developed a housing equity framework that was published in 2025 that helps to guide, inform, and improve our existing and future housing programs. And we also have a few new programs in our current work plan that will be launched or under development soon. The PLHA down payment loan program, the legal documents are with California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, for approval, and we're hopeful for an early spring launch. And so that will be a more traditional down payment assistance loan that serves households making up to 120% AMI. And then we will hope to begin program development in summer of 2026 for our deed restriction, home hardening and decarbonization deed restriction program, and the home repair and rehabilitation program. I'm going to conclude with an update on our deed restricted housing. In 2022, Council set the ambitious goal to deed restrict 10% of Truckee's housing stock by 2032. We currently have 798 deed restricted units, which is about 6% of our housing stock. These deed restricted units have been created through a number of pathways. While some have been and will be developed through the town housing programs like ADU loans, THAP, and homegrown housing, the majority have been created through local affordable housing developments, many of which have been financially supported by the town and inclusionary and workforce housing policies. If you're interested in deed restricted housing, you should stick around for the discussion items, as there will be an in-depth discussion of homegrown housing. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have when we get to questions.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I think we just have two other presentations, correct? Nikki, you've got a fiscal year update for us? Budget. Budget update. Oh, our budget presentation, yes.
We're excited to embark on the budget process again, this time for the fiscal year 26-27 budget. As a reminder, we launched our new budget software last year, so we are on a virtual budget. There is a PDF option for people who like to print that out and read it. Otherwise, there's we have an electronic version that's much more easy to search through and navigate. So check that out on the town website. This is our last year of a one-year budget. We implemented a new software which prevented the adoption of the two-year budget model last year. So now we're waiting for the next two-year budget two-year council work plan to align the budget with. So our goal is that the fiscal year 27-28 and 28-29 budget will be a two-year budget. So one year away. So exciting.
That is very exciting for all of you.
It is a really big lift. Here's the internal process that's occurring right now. Staff is currently, as of 3 p.m. this afternoon, working on implementing their budget numbers. Those are all due back to the finance team by Friday, March 6th. That includes operating and capital budgets. The finance team will work on compiling all of the numbers into a draft budget for internal processing through the month of March, and we will be meeting with Jen and the division managers and department heads the week of April 6th through the 9th. We'll have our initial meeting with council on April 28th to do a high-level review of any constraints that we have and how we envision meeting council's priorities. Then we will bring a draft public version of the budget to council on May 11th. That'll be distributed to council on May 11th. We will meet with council on May 26th. That's the Tuesday normal meeting. And then staff will work to incorporate all the changes, and we will bring that to council hopefully the first meeting in June, if not the second meeting in June, depending on how many changes we have. If you're a member of the public wanting to know how you can get involved, we will have today we're meeting with council to tell you about the schedule. The next opportunity will be this Thursday, January 29th. We have a council retreat and priority setting affirmation at the Gravity House. I actually think it starts at 9 a.m., not noon. You're welcome to come at noon, or you can come at 9. We'll be there. And on Tuesday, March 10th, we plan to bring back council's priorities and work plans for affirmation at the council meeting. That is also a public meeting, just like this one. And we will also have a town talk. It's not listed on here. You're not actually providing input on the budget, but if you want to know about the budget, we will be participating in the Chamber's Town Talk on Monday, April 27th at the Martis Valley Lodge. And Tuesday, April 28th will be the initial budget review with council. So that high-level review where we kind of go over budgetary constraints, project alternatives, making sure that we're meeting council's priorities. Tuesday, May 26th, will be our in-depth budget review. So we will put out a draft of the budget and we will go through in as much detail as council would like to go into, and that'll be available on the town website prior to the meeting with the normal agenda. And then obviously it will come back to council in June for adoption, and that will also be a public meeting. That's all we had.
Thank you, Nikki. Jen, you've got a town manager's report for us?
The only announcement for the town manager's report is there will be a Truckee Tahoe Homeless Advisory Coalition meeting next Thursday in this room. I believe it's starting at 5 o'clock, but there'll be notification going out through the THAC listserv. For anybody that's not signed up, you can go to the Truckee Tahoe Homeless Advisory Coalition website and sign up for news alerts on that. That's all we have.
And that is pending the opening of the Navigation Center sometime in the next month?
Yes, sometime in February. We don't have an exact date right now, but TIs are in process and they're working through those.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with council questions on any of those last 4 presentations. Council questions or comments?
Yeah, just 2 questions for Lynn. Lynn, I wanted to get an idea of the success of the various housing programs, and I guess that's in the context of what we've budgeted. For example, on THAP, are we still getting people signing up for THAP? Is there money sitting available for people, or is it?
Yeah, so we are still having people interested in THAP for sure. We're still having good attendance at our workshops. We did a couple this fiscal year. In the middle of the winter, we tend to not have as many purchases just because it's less busy. When we get closer to the spring and we'll see, things have been a little slower this year. I think house prices are still high and interest rates are still high. They're dropping. We've actually been doing a lot of refinances for our THAP buyers, so bringing down their payments, which has been nice. But yeah, I think when we get closer to the spring and see if there's an uptick, we'll have a better idea. Right now, we have funds to do 10, and we've done 2 this year. But we've also had, last year, I think we had 6 come through in the last 6 weeks of the fiscal year. So it's kind of up and down. So it's a little hard to predict, although it has been a little bit slower.
Okay, and then my other question on the lease to locals, I think you gave us a total amount. Can you, what's at any given point in time, are we averaging 50 active?
We do about 50 a year. That's a good average count. We've done about 50 per fiscal year. Okay. And we're on track to exceed that this year, actually, the last I checked.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor, do you have any comments or questions?
Well, first, Jackie, I wanted to say thank you, not only for the just wonderful presentation, but for taking time and sitting down with me earlier this week to also sort of walk me through where VTT is. I really appreciate it. I know you're really, really busy, so thank you for doing that. On the housing program, Lynn, I just wanted to ask, so the first numbers that you gave, I think it was 27 created. That's just ADUs strictly through financial incentives. The converted is through long-term rentals.
And it also includes THAP. You're correct.
Okay. And then so the preserved, what does that include? I think it was 96. Yeah, 96.
So the preserved includes the long-term rentals through rooted renters. So because it's only a 3-year, but that is considered preserved because they're being preserved at a below market rate. And then the 31 THAP houses.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That's it. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Romack, Councilmember Pallavi. I would just like to say that I think this is actually incredibly stunning. 7 years ago, Council Pallavi and I joined the council, and this was a real major focus, and we went from virtually 0 programs to what we just saw, which is just startling and encouraging. And I know we're really kind of just beginning. Some of these programs are still very new and fresh, and we haven't really seen their full potential expressed yet. So I really want to thank staff for their willingness to be incredibly creative with these programs and standing them up so quickly and effectively and producing such extraordinary results. So thank you. And Jackie, I do have a couple of questions for you if you want to jump to the podium, if you don't mind. And if these are too technical, feel free to follow up with me with an email. But I am really curious to understand how you get that. I put down a number of 7.4 million is spent from our overnight visitors because they spend 4 times more than a day visitor. How do you get to this $7.4 million number? Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, I thought that there would be a question about that, and Hillary actually just sent me a question about it too. It's in our appendix. So how we looked at that, it's an extrapolation, right? But we got the data from our economic impact report. Dean Runyon and Associates, they've been doing it for years for us, and within that report in 2024, the overnight visitor on average spends about $298 a day. And if you were to look at if they were rented in those 222 homes were actually rented out, according to town's data, it's 55 nights on average is how much it's rented out throughout the year. So it's a little bit of quick math here. So 298 times the 55 nights times the 222 unused or inactive homes at 2 people, a modest 2 people staying in a vacation rental, and that's how we got to the 7.2 million.
Okay, yeah, that's probably conservative because most people staying in a STR are usually a family or 2 couples or something. Okay, that's very helpful.
Yep.
And then specifically how you target quality over quantity. You talk about values-based marketing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? How is that distinguished from just general marketing? Because I see the emails coming out from you guys, and then hey, these are great things to do in Truckee après ski or whatever, right?
Sure.
So how is it? Explain to me how you're targeting that quality over quantity, the values-based marketing for stewardship, right?
Yep. So we do a couple of different things. I also have a slide in this in the appendix, and Dave's laughing at me because I have a lot of slides. But we use a couple of different ways. So unfortunately, with marketing, your every move, your digital moves are being watched, right? And so through some of these targeting platforms, we did some CTV, which stands for connected TV. So we had a 30-second commercial spot that we were running on streaming services. If you have Hulu or Roku cable, you would see our ad. However, we have a very sophisticated way to target those people, like down to the very granular level of they like to use reusable water bottles. That streaming service or that ad provider can get quite granular in terms of the specifics, the psychographics of a user. In addition, we just look at meta too. We can target based on, your behavior on social media. We know what you're doing and how to reach you.
That's both interesting and terrifying.
And creepy. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Okay, so that explains why I see the emails, but I'm not getting any of the other marketing that's probably more targeted to that specialty stewardship group that we're looking for.
Exactly. And hopefully, you wouldn't be getting that, right? Because we're trying to get outside of the area, outside of the drive market too. And our owned channels, we're we're constantly communicating to those folks, but that's not really targeted necessarily, or we can, but that's just our own database. So the paid media really allows us to reach new audiences that align with our values here in the community.
Great, thank you. And the last thing I'll say is just I look forward to the next phase of this discussion. And as you're probably well aware, I'm really interested in if we were going to grant that increase, specifically what it would be targeting and how would we be supporting the destination stewardship focus of VTT. So I look forward to that very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything
I
else
would
from
just
other-
I would just
Yeah.
add, I wasn't joking. Jackie does have like 20 slides of appendices with how she calculated all of that data, and I would invite all of you. We really prepared it for Councilmember Zabriskie, but for everybody else, I'm sure she's happy to share it. If you shoot her an email, she'll be happy to get you all of that data.
Please, if you would like to forward on to the full council so that we have that data, we might save a couple dozen questions on the next agenda item. then.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's hang out. Let's talk data.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Good job, Jackie.
Thank you.
That's why I enjoyed having the mayor ask those questions. I was right in there.
Okay, at this point, I will open up the presentations to public comment. If anybody has any public comment on any of the prior presentations, we welcome you now. Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda, if we're ready. Everybody ready for that? Okay, 6.1, minutes for the January 13th, 2026 regular meeting. 6.2, I need to read the whole thing, so bear with me. Town attorney contract approval and non-base pay compensation. The recommended action is that Council 1 approve the employment agreement for town attorney Andrew Morris for the period December 31st, 2025 through December 31st, 2029, with an annual salary of $267,479, deferred compensation of $18,350, pension costs of $22,145, and other fringe benefits, including insurance of $58,697. And 2, approve Resolution 2026-02, awarding a non-base pay compensation increase to town attorney Andrew Morris, resulting in a one-time lump sum payment amount of $2,547.48. And 6.3, contract amendment with the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District for additional caption services for the town of Truckee televised public meetings. Would any council member like to poll any consent agenda item? Staff?
No, Mayor.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to poll a consent agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I am inviting a motion.
I'll move on the consent calendar. That'll be a
Second.
Oh.
Go for it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe
Can we
it.
call second as Courtney?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe we are unanimous. And so that brings us to our one and only discussion item tonight. And it's a good juicy one. So Lynn's back up. I'll give her a moment to pull up the presentation. So this is Homegrown Housing Valuation Analysis and Proposed Program Modifications. We have talked about this up here a couple of times already. And so now we're really honing in this program proposal. Take it away, Lynn.
Yes. Hello, Mayor and Council members. Back already. I'm here tonight now to present the Homegrown Housing Valuation Analysis and Proposed Program Modifications relating to the monetary incentives. Erin Hussein with BAE Urban Economics is also here and available to answer questions. In 2022, Council adopted a goal to de-restrict 10% of Truckee's housing stock by 2032, an estimated 1,500 units of deed-restricted housing to help meet our overall housing goal. Deed restrictions are widely recognized among similar communities as one of the most effective tools to ensure that housing units are permanently preserved and available to house full-time residents and members of the workforce at a variety of income levels who would otherwise struggle to afford housing. Additionally, developing sufficient stock of deed-restricted housing will effectively result in a secondary housing market of deed-restricted units that tend to be more affordable than unrestricted units. Homegrown housing, which was formerly deed restriction for new housing development, is one of the programs that is helping to meet this deed restriction goal. It targets the creation of units with deed restrictions for households earning up to 180% of AMI, which are not currently incentivized through other local or state policies, and seeks to balance the need for housing by allowing additional density with the town's desire to maintain a consistent community character through high-quality project design. So currently, the Homegrown Housing Program, a few selected requirements and information. It pays developers 16% of appraised value up to $110,000 per unit. It deed restricts units for occupancy by households making up to 180% AMI. It caps rent at a level that is affordable to households making 120% of AMI. The units must be studio, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom. The project must be in Gateway or downtown, and the units must have at least 1 parking space. And there you can see there, I show what the current income cap for household sizes of 1 through 3 and what the rent cap of a studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom are at that 120% AMI rent cap and 180% AMI income cap. So in December, So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our current housing needs. In December, the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation shared the 2025 Tahoe Truckee Housing Needs Assessment Update with its housing partners. This report evaluates the workforce housing need for the region based on a number of factors, including AMI levels and unit size. While the report is focused on regional need, it does include Truckee-specific data that we extensively use to inform program design. Guidelines for homegrown housing were originally developed using data from the 2023 update, and we looked at the 2025 update to confirm that the units targeted by this program are still very much needed. The data included here is what's most relevant to homegrown housing. Although while homegrown housing only goes up to 180% AMI, the AMI category up to 195% does most closely align with the program requirements, and that 195% AMI is just the bucket that they used in the needs assessment. So the number of inadequately housed households in Truckee up to 195% of AMI is almost 4,000, which is split about 50-50 between low income, so up to 80% AMI, and moderate and above households, so that 80% to 195%. And the housing need by unit size still shows a significant need for studio, 1 and 2 bedroom units, especially in that 0 to 195% AMI level. In September of 2025, Council discussed potential changes to homegrown housing, including changes to the monetary incentives and the addition of non-monetary incentives as part of the implementation of the 2040 General Plan. And then Council provided direction to staff to engage with BAE Urban Economics to complete a development feasibility analysis and a funding option analysis for potential expanded program funding. And the funding options analysis will go to Council in 2026, so you'll be seeing that information soon, but not in this presentation. Council also directed us to update the program guidelines with changes to program qualification and payment structure for monetary incentives, and to create a new chapter of the development code specific to workforce housing that will be the non-monetary incentive portion, which includes input from Planning Commission. The non-monetary incentives will be presented to Council in February or March of 2026. We are returning to Council right now with further development on the proposed program changes discussed in September, including expanding the program boundaries, project milestone requirements, and changes to the incentive payment structure. Staff has also drafted several other proposed modifications that have not yet been discussed by Council. An application closure date of March 31st, 2026 for projects wishing to apply under the current guidelines, opportunity to request funding for shovel-ready projects when existing funding has been allocated, and requiring program applicants to have a planning application that has been deemed complete by the Planning Division. First up is program boundaries. I just wanted I'm not planning to go into super depth on this because you did discuss this pretty thoroughly back in September, but just a reminder of the proposed updated program boundaries, which include the VMT screened out areas for residential and non-residential areas. These areas are close to transit and core services and include many existing parcels with higher density zoning. Due to the ongoing updates to the program's monetary incentives and the in-process creation of the Development Code chapter on workforce housing, we recommend closing applications to homegrown housing under the currently adopted guidelines on March 31st, 2026. To be considered complete, the applicant will need to submit a complete program application, which includes all program details like a detailed pro forma and funding stack, and then the program administrator, Housing Inc., will make a determination on whether the application is complete. This will give clarity to potential program applicants and streamline administration for town staff, Sierra Business Council, the program operator, and Housing Inc. As part of intaking the first few program applications and improving and refining the application process with input from the Planning Division, we also recommend that applicants have a planning application that's been deemed complete by the Planning Division in order to be approved from the program and reserve incentive funds. This will help to ensure that funds are reserved and committed for projects that are moving forward. We also recommend requiring participating projects to meet design and construction milestones in order to help ensure that funds are reserved and committed for projects that are moving forward. So one, the participant must submit building permit applications within 9 months of project entitlement. The building permit must be issued within 18 months of project entitlement. A first inspection must be scheduled within 24 months of project entitlement. Certificate of occupancy issued within 30 months of project entitlement. Funding approval will be canceled if these milestones are not met and or the project application is considered inactive as outlined in the development code. And the program operator may grant one 90-day extension under certain circumstances. We also recommend adding language to the guidelines that allow applicants with shovel-ready projects to apply for funding even when funding has been allocated. Upon execution of a fully complete application, as deemed so by the program operator and administrator, the operator would return to council with a program funding and budget adjustment request. This would allow for an opportunity for council to discuss increasing budget funds for shovel-ready projects. So next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the valuation analysis and then get into the details on the proposed changes to the incentive payments. The purpose of this valuation analysis is to estimate the potential subsidy amounts that would be required to achieve project feasibility under current market conditions and help guide council in determining appropriate incentive payment amounts. BAE prepared pro forma financial models for 3 different types of new housing development, including multifamily rental apartments, a mixed-use multifamily rental project, and rental townhomes. The analysis used draft development standards that would apply to projects using the proposed homegrown housing non-monetary incentives like streamlined review, reduced parking requirements, more flexible development standards, and a density bonus. It used development cost and revenue assumptions based on a review of available information associated with recent and ongoing development projects in the region and through one-on-one interviews with representatives from the local development community. Revenue assumptions are loosely based on current asking rents at Coburn Crossing, which is the only example of newly constructed market rate multifamily rental housing in the region. This table shows the unit count for each prototype and identifies how many units are market rate and deed restricted at each category of rent cap. It also shows the site size, parking requirement, percentage of total site coverage, and circulation requirement. The financial feasibility of each development prototype was assessed under 2 scenarios. The first scenario involved the sale of the property by the developer upon achieving stabilized occupancy, and the second assumes that the property is developed by an investment group and is held for an extended period. Excuse me. Depending on the prototype and how the subsidy amount is calculated, the projects would require approximately $200,000 to $487,000 per restricted unit in direct cash subsidy to make the projects financially viable and attractive to developers. Prototype 3 generally requires a lease subsidy, which is the higher density of the two residential-only project prototypes and includes the lowest amount of non-leasable coverage with limited on-site circulation and parking compared to Prototype 1. Additionally, it is 100% deed-restricted with rents capped at affordability at 120% AMI, while Prototypes 1 and 2 have some units capped at affordable to 80% AMI. Prototype 2, the mixed-use project, would likely require the greatest subsidy due to the inclusion of unsubsidized market rate housing units and leasable commercial space, neither of which generates sufficient revenue to offset the associated build costs, thereby increasing the overall subsidy needs. The other important finding is the relative financial efficiency of rental units of different unit sizes. Generally, development costs are assumed to scale faster than market rate rents as the unit size increases. So as a result, studio and one-bedroom units are typically more efficient and require less subsidy than the larger 2- and 3-bedroom units. So back in September 2025, Council directed us to explore an incentive payment structure based on unit size rather than appraised value. This model would allow project developers to have more upfront certainty on the total incentive payments, which helps with securing additional funding, and it would incentivize more 1- and 2-bedroom units as opposed to studios only. Based on valuation analysis by BAE and developer feedback, we recommend the following per unit incentive amounts: $100,000 for a studio, $150,000 for a 1-bedroom, and $225,000 for a 2-bedroom. The valuation analysis looked at 3 specific prototypes and estimated required subsidies based on these specific scenarios. Actual projects will have conditions that may vary widely and greatly impact the subsidy needed. Additionally, when developing incentive recommendations, we focused on prototypes 1 and 3 as the mixed-use project resulted in very high subsidy amounts required. And the goal of this program is the development of housing units, not necessarily prioritizing mixed-use development. We use these ranges as guide rails to develop the incentive recommendation, weighted towards the range in the stabilized sales scenario subsidies, as that's typically used in this type of analysis. Council also directed staff to explore an incentive payment model that would offer an increased incentive payment for units that are deed restricted with a rent cap that is affordable to 80% AMI. Rough estimates indicate that incentive payments would need to increase by about 16% for units that are deed restricted as affordable to households making 80% of AMI to offset reduced rental incomes compared to those that are affordable to households making up to 120% of AMI. If Council does decide to offer increased incentive amounts for units that are deed restricted to be affordable at 80% AMI, we do recommend that the qualification for occupancy be dropped to 120% AMI for these units. So as you can see, the recommended incentive amounts at the 80% AMI rent cap is $116,000 for studio, $174,000 for 1-bedroom, and $261,000 for 2-bedroom. So the first table compares the maximum rental cap at affordability for households making up to 120% AMI and 80% AMI. Currently, market rent for these smaller units are affordable to households making up to 120% AMI, but not 80% AMI. Note, the property owner can choose to charge less than this to align with the market. These are the maximums allowed to be charged for units deed restricted through homegrown housing. The second table compares the income caps for occupancy at 180% AMI and 120% AMI. I also put an hourly wage that correlates with each AMI level to help clarify the annual income cap. I know sometimes it's easier to kind of get your mind around it when you see what the hourly is compared to that annual income cap. And as a reminder, each unit rental price is capped according to the size, while occupancy qualification of the actual unit is determined by the household that is applying for the specific unit. For example, a studio deed restricted through homegrown housing for occupancy at 180% AMI might have 1 person or 2 people living in it. No matter who is living there, the rent cannot be more than $2,616 per month. However, the qualification for the unit, if 1 person is living there, they can make $156,960 annually. But if 2 people are living there, their household income can be up to $179,460. The updates to homegrown housing have several distinct parts that we're aligning with a goal of adoption by early spring 2026. Next up, staff will present Council with proposed non-monetary incentives and the first reading of the development. Oh, wait, I put those in the wrong order. Sorry. Next up, we will present funding options analysis in February 2026 for direction on which funding options to further pursue. Then there will be the proposed non-monetary incentives and first reading of development code changes in March 2026. The second reading of the ordinance adopting a new development code chapter will come after that. And finally, the adoption of updated homegrown housing program guidelines in early spring 2026. We are looking for council feedback on a number of specific questions, and on request of the mayor, we are planning to split the questions into 2 sections to help us keep track of your comments. So first up, we're going to do questions 1 through 4 that were in blue, and then follow up with questions on 5 through 7 in green.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Yeah, so this was per my request because there's a lot of very specific details here to go through, so thank you for separating that out. Do we have council questions to start with? Mayor Zabriskie, or Mayor Zabriskie?
Former mayor.
Former Mayor Zabriskie?
Yes, Lynn, my abiding concern, of course, is how do we maximize housing with limited funds? How do we get the most bang for our buck? And I'm thinking back to September, I think we were talking about a budget of $5.5 million, and we heard from Sierra Business Council they had possibly 46 units spread over 3 potential projects, something like that. If I were just to take that budget and that number of projects, I come out at $136,000 a unit. And then when I look at the numbers that are being presented here, it looks like a much higher number of units. And I haven't heard you mention whether we would need to increase the budget in order to accommodate the figures we're looking at here.
Well, we're going to focus on the budget piece at the February meeting when we come with the funding option analysis. But yes, with these increased incentive amounts, we would either need to increase the budget available for homegrown housing incentive, or it would incentivize fewer units. We could pay for fewer units. While the original up to $110,000 per unit based on appraised value, we do have one project moving forward based on that. A lot of the feedback we got, as you've heard before, was that it penciled out for studios, but not really 1 or 2 bedrooms. And we do have an interest in incentivizing those other unit sizes. And so the valuation analysis was to really look and see, is the feedback we're getting backed up by the numbers, which it really does seem that it is, that it needs to be, in order to get those bigger units, it needs to be a higher incentive amount, generally, not every project.
And I do want to just pause and remind everybody that, yeah, it is clear this is going to require additional funding, and we do have a separate and probably very detailed conversation coming about that. So we're going to really try to focus in on the program.
Yeah, I guess my point was I wanted to know if what we were anticipating had changed. When we were looking at this in September, we were assuming a lower per unit average cost.
Maybe I can jump in. I think in September, you just had the program guidelines as they exist today, probably expecting to see higher incentive amounts come back, depending on the analysis, which in fact they did. The nice thing about the timing of this discussion is that you're able to talk today about the program guidelines and the incentive amounts. We're going to have the next conversation to figure out how we're going to fund what you choose to recommend moving forward. So that gives us some more context and parameters around the funding conversation, followed by the upcoming budget season, where there will be give and takes in terms of what do you want to appropriate for budget given the new guidelines, how many units do you want to try to incentivize in the coming year as we work towards those longer term funding solutions. So you will have choices to make during the budget process with this program.
Right. Okay. Lynn, early in your presentation, the second or third slide showed housing need by number of units. And I was wondering if you could reconcile this slide with table 3 in the staff report. The numbers are different, and I don't know why.
Let me pull up table 3 in the staff
Sure.
report. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't have
Do you-
page numbers, but
Do you have another question while she's pulling that up?
Oh. So the
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the table 3,
Doesn't table 3 include above 195%
yeah, it does
AMI?
it includes above 195% AMI. That's the difference. That's the total need across all of Truckee. The table in the presentation is only up to 195% AMI.
Okay, and then you showed that for table 3 and table 2, the total was just about the same on each, 3,991, 3,992. So it made it appear there really wasn't any need for three-bedroom units within that range.
So table 2 in the staff report, that's the same as this table up to here, is the total units needed across those different AMI bands from 0 to 195% of AMI. That includes all unit sizes, studios up to 3+ bedrooms. Table 3 is all, I should have made them align more. I apologize. I tried to make them align a little bit more in this presentation. Table 3 is the overall units based on unit size for the units that are incentivized in this program. So table 3 in the staff report is just studio 1 and 2 bedrooms at all income levels, showing the full need of the town. Whereas this one in the presentation is studio 1, 2, and then a 3+ bedroom one just for fun for the income levels that match with the homegrown housing, or as close as we have it.
Okay, and getting to the final question on this area, which is, are we missing a large number of 3+ bedroom units that are needed by restricting our program to no more than 2 bedroom units?
Well, there's obviously need for 3+ bedrooms as well. One of the things that we were thinking of is a huge percentage of our housing stock is already 3+ bedroom units. While there is need for 3+ bedroom units, that is the vast majority of our housing stock that's already existing. Also, one of the things we determined through this valuation analysis is a 3-bedroom unit would also, because it would need a bigger subsidy as well, because of how it scales. So it would be another bigger subsidy. Additionally, we anticipate that once there are more studio 1 and 2 bedroom units, we know this data from our housing programs, a lot of people in 3-bedroom units are roommate households who might choose to live in a smaller unit, freeing up some of those existing 3-bedroom units to fill this 3+ bedroom need.
Okay. Did you look at the Placer County's launch pad to see how what we're looking at compares with what they've already done?
I didn't look at their need. I'm not sure. I did read that staff report a long time ago. Most of the information has fallen out of my head on that specifically. I know their program has a flat incentive. It's not based on bedroom size. It's just $200,000 per unit for new development, a different amount for ADUs. I don't actually recall what their need was, and that data is included in the new needs assessment, but I didn't do any comparison against Placer County compared to ours for this particular staff report.
I'll just add in that we did hear some feedback from our development team that's going through the Edmonds Loft process. They had looked into Launchpad. So they provided some feedback on that. And then our consultant, Aaron, he did work on developing the Launchpad program with Placer County. So he was able to offer insights into that as well.
Okay. And then finally, on the geographical boundaries, I'm trying to remember from our discussion in September, didn't we determine there's not fixed route service to the west end of Donner Lake, and there's not fixed route service out to Glenshire?
Yeah, there's not necessarily fixed route service to every single pocket here. These were chosen because have already been determined as VMT screened out areas, and while not every single little parcel does meet every single one of those close to transit and core services, they do meet at least some of those goals. So it's an already existing, layer that we're using to determine policy. So we wanted to align it with an existing, boundary.
Yeah. And then related to these same areas, has staff looked at whether this could provide housing for people who would work at Donner Lake or Glenshire, or again, would it be subsidized housing for people who could be working anywhere in the school district?
They could, as the program guidelines are written now and proposed, it would be, it would be anywhere in the school district boundaries. That doesn't mean a property developer, they could choose to have a preference for people when they're they could put that in their, guidelines to when they're selecting tenants. They could prioritize local employees that are more local to those specific areas.
Okay. And then the last thing is, I noticed in September you were hit with only 42 questions, and the list is much shorter this time. So that's progress of a
Congratulations,
kind.
Councilmember Zabriskie.
Yeah. Thank you. Those are all my questions for now.
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
I do. Lynn, thank you for the great presentation, and to BAE just for all the detail in the staff report. A couple of questions. So even with the proposed monetary incentive increases, there's still a per unit shortfall that depends on project type and unit size, the financial structure, the mix of the AMI restrictions. So there's still a feasibility gap. Sorry, this has a little bit of lead in to get to the question. And it seems like the staff report is assuming that the non-monetary incentives will bridge that remaining feasibility gap. 10 to 25% density bonus, reduced parking requirements, streamlined design review, etc. Has staff quantified whether these non-monetary incentives are actually worth sort of the amount per unit to developers? Are they going to actually bridge that gap, or is that what you're saying is going to come to us in March?
I'm going to jump in on the answer to this one. I think it came in fairly late, but you did get a public comment on this item from the Edmonds team, and they're here in the room, so you might want to ask them some questions. And, the best information we really have is to go off of the approved project that's going to break ground in spring. And I think I read your comment pretty quickly, but what we heard in our discussions with them and the entry was these incentive amounts seem to fit right. So the analysis that Aaron did was great and really helpful, but there's a lot of assumptions built into that. And what we're hearing from the local group that is actually getting ready to build and has figured out how to pencil these is they felt right, I think, is what I saw quickly in your public comment letter, and that's what we heard in our retreat. The non-monetary incentives are also designed to help encourage the projects and provide an easier pathway, and maybe hopefully resolve some of the site constraints, which are the limitations that are not monetary limitations. There are still site constraints that are going to force projects into a certain box. Like, you are still, as proposed, requiring 1 parking spot per unit to make a project functional. That's probably something that we would recommend stays on the table and is really important, but those naturally create site constraints. It's not everything offered in the development code incentive package is really an incentive to offset costs. They are incentives to help work within the constraints that we have. I had another thought and I lost it, but I think your point of looking at the feasibility study is certainly valid, but there's so many, I think, assumptions in there that when we take those ranges and we hear from what we're learning with the project, those felt like the right fit at the moment.
And sorry if it came in late, I didn't read it if it was after about 3:00. When you said those incentives felt right, you're talking specifically about the financial incentives?
Yes, the financial incentives, the increased incentive amount for the lower AMI amount seemed to fit. And then we've also heard in our conversations that actual increased density itself is not an incentive for the most part, primarily because of the site constraints on these projects. So what we started this conversation as, and particularly related to development code incentives, was the idea of a town density incentive program. And we're learning that that actually isn't something that helps a project pencil.
So can I add a tiny bit more color? Because I think there's one more piece of that also that you maybe just glanced over quickly. The study that BAE did, exactly as Jen said, was very assumption based. I think within the group that was meeting as we sort of developed a lot of this was also a realization that whatever action we take to go up, our funding is also going to be severely constrained until we have the round 2 part of the conversation. So the point was also not necessarily to make this the easiest thing to accomplish from day one. It was to put in a little bit of skin in the game through the private community, through that development community, to sort of prove results at the end of the day. I think is sort of where we all came from, was if we were going to close that gap completely, do we then change the dynamic on the ground a little bit? And I think this whole process has been very deliberate in sort of how it's being rolled out. So I'm not sure the goal was initially to close that financial gap. It was to minimize it, maybe is a better way to describe it.
I understand and respect that, and I'm asking the question because what I don't want to do, and this is, we're getting away from questions already, and I'd prefer to stick to questions, but what I don't want to do is say, hey, here are our incentives, we've increased them. We haven't actually gotten information on the non-monetary incentives. We're trying to make a decision tonight on financial incentives without full context. That is troubling to me because I don't want to be absent critical information and then potentially set ourselves up for failure. So let me go on with the rest of my questions really quickly, just so, because I think this is going to be a lengthy item and I want to get us through it. Okay. Of the 3 pending applications that are referenced in the staff report, are they viable under the 110,000 structure, or they're waiting for new incentives? Like a new incentive program?
I think a mix of both. One piece is that the updated guidelines do have the exclusion of projects that use state density bonus, and at least one and potentially another are using state density bonus. So potentially, so they wouldn't qualify under the new programs even if they'd prefer the higher amounts. And we do know at least one program or one application plans to apply under the new program, not the old. So
I think that's important, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, to your previous comment. Part of why you're getting this now without all of the other pieces, the development code piece is pretty complicated, and Planning Commission needed a second hearing at that. So we just don't have that ready because they're having to hear that again. And then you have at least one project in the queue that is waiting to understand what these incentive amounts likely will be so they can start developing and designing their project. And I think they're even hoping to get enough of a queue from you tonight on that so they can begin that process. And so while it may be frustrating not to have the whole context, we're trying to support the movement of the projects forward.
I appreciate that. For the shovel-ready priority language, how are we defining or putting boundaries around what shovel-ready projects are, or what that language means?
I'll jump in again. So this was really us trying to be thoughtful and having some foresight. We have, there's a real possibility that there could be an entitled project that has got building permits, ready to start building, and realizes, maybe they didn't understand this program and exists, or there's somehow, even right now, if you're expanding boundaries, there might be a project that is within this boundary that is ready to start construction this year, and you may have funds fully committed, depending on what those incentive amounts are. So we wanted to create a pathway to encourage those developers to still submit applications and still have the opportunity to have that conversation with council about reallocating funds from different sources if it's something that we feel we could meet to move that forward. So it really means building permits ready to begin construction.
Yeah, I would likely, when we bring the updated guidelines in conjunction with the development code piece, we'll have more specific language, but it will likely be related to this project with input from planning, shovel ready. It will be defined in conjunction with this project milestones, like how far along they are on this project milestones path.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And as with all of our endeavors, I always hope we're wildly successful. So what happens when our shovel-ready projects exceed available funding?
That's when it will come back to you for difficult budget choices.
We get a new council or a new agenda item.
Last question. If we add the bonus for the 80% AMI rent caps, does that sufficiently incentivize that deeper affordability? I know for Councilmember Pallavi, it's not necessarily that we're making it so there's a zero feasibility gap, but based on the BAE analysis, which I understand has a lot of assumptions, it seems like that bonus would have to be quite a bit higher to reflect that actual gap.
Again, I think I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to read that public comment, but we're just trying to use the information we have, and I think it was our best recommendation from the feedback that we've gotten that it would fill that gap.
Yeah, I think we've got a big target and we're trying to narrow in those amounts, right? And we're making progress, but we don't have all the information. Councilmember Romack.
Yes, appreciate all of this, Lynn, all the work, everybody. This was great, and I asked some questions in advance, and I have more questions. First is around selling these units, and I know I asked in advance. We're still proposing that we would keep that in the guidelines that these units could be sold. They would have to be sold under the 180% AMI, correct?
Yes. So as proposed right now, we did not focus a ton on the for sale. It is still allowed through the program, but just the feedback that we've heard is this program seems like it will likely work better for rentals. We just more of the discussion has been around rentals and leases. There's just an overall price cap on the for sale units at $687,500, which is affordable to a household of two. That kind of comes out of that this program came out of THAP, where we just have an overall price cap that's kind of based on kind of average, who we think we're going to be, like size of households that are going to be in the units of these size. So yeah, that was where that 687.5 came from. That is potentially something that if we do have interest from for a for sale development, if we start having interest in that, we could bring this back to council to look at those guidelines if it seems like it doesn't fit anymore, because that number was developed a while ago. I looked at the AMI numbers and it's still kind of within that affordability range for the households that this program's targeting.
Okay, thank you. Another question was going to be, why didn't we ask BAE to study a for sale product? But it sounds like we're kind of hearing, that rental is where developers are thinking this makes sense, and so staff felt like it made sense to just focus there on time and energy.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Question around, this gets to the location available, because I was reflecting back at our council workshop on our housing element. I remember one of the gentlemen at the table that had the Spanish translation made the comment of, we want to see housing everywhere. And so again, we want to focus on housing in appropriate places. And I think larger multifamily units make sense in these VMT places. But in our guidelines, you don't have to do a large project. You could do a duplex, or something smaller that could be allowed in a lot of other places in town, correct?
Yeah, you could do a duplex. It's just one, or it's more than one unit is the requirement.
More than one. Okay. So just food for thought, putting that out there, of thinking about our boundaries on the program. Okay, and then I appreciate your housing program at the beginning, Lynn. A lot of great data. And you reminded me that our rental programs with lease to locals and rooted renters, we use the average household income, not the full household income. But this, we're proposing full household income to determine eligibility, correct?
Yes, it's full household eligibility as proposed right now.
Is there a reason to not, because you mentioned how rentals, we look a little bit different. Is there a reason that staff thinks we should go with full household for this program rather than average?
Yeah, the couple reasons. The first is the smaller units do tend just, and again, this is anecdotal, but I do see a lot of profiles of these program users, is the studio 1 and 2 bedrooms tend to be 1 to 2 household size of 1 to 2, which doesn't, the calculation really falls apart with like the 3, 4, 5 household size that are unrelated all income earner. That's when it really starts to fall apart, because the state and federal numbers are based on the idea that there's probably only 1 or 2 income earners in a household of 5. So these smaller units do tend to be more a smaller household where it does tend to fit a little bit better. Additionally, well, we could, because we do that for other rental programs, we don't do that for the for sale. So that was kind of the other reason. It did not change, even though this has become more focused on rentals. When it was first developed, it was developed with the idea that these might be for sale units. And we definitely could do it as an average. I think there's, both upsides and downsides to that, although we would likely want to pick a much lower AMI cap. If we did 180 average, a household of 2 could make, I think, over $300,000 and qualify for the program. So it would probably be a significantly lower AMI cap. Although, I mean, we could back out and end up at kind of the same AMI level, but it is just something, it's a little easier to communicate because programs like these tend to use the traditional calculation.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And then, looking at prototype 1 and prototype 3, vast difference in subsidy needed. Was there any consideration in having different subsidies based on what type of project you're creating? So you would get a lower subsidy if you're doing a project that fits more with prototype 3, but a higher subsidy if you're doing something more with prototype 1.
That wasn't something that we looked at. One piece when this program was spun off of THAP to be operated by an outside program operator, one of the things that we wanted to do was make it very simple and have yes, no, this is the amount you get. It's not based, and then even further, not based on appraised value, it's based on a unit count. And so we didn't really consider that, just as a simplification and making the program operation easier rather than adding more tiers basically to the program. So for simpler program operation.
I think maybe 2 key takeaways from all of our in-treat conversations about that, or about the program in general. One, the certainty of funding was a main goal in the primary interest in this program and preference over like Launchpad as an example. And I think 2, well, maybe not phrased this way, it was simplicity. Like the developers that are going to lean into this program are likely going to design around whatever those incentives are and figure out what that right balance is. And overcomplicating, we went down the path of should it be based on square footage or, all these different things. And I think we landed on as simple as we can make it. It can be adjusted later if there need to be, was kind of the themes that arose.
Thank you. And then I think this is my last one. The discussion around increasing incentives by 16% if it's 80% AMI. I guess when I was looking at prototype 3, that was all 120% AMI. Prototype 1 had more 80, and that was a bigger difference than 16% between those two. So is 16% enough of a, does staff feel, again, that it's enough, maybe not covering the full delta, but to really help support that 80 to 120%?
That is some feedback that we've gotten, as Jen mentioned, that 16% felt like it was a sufficient amount.
You're also welcome to, Aaron's here and he did that analysis, so he might be able to speak a little bit more about, it was a pretty rough, hard number to get to in terms of what that was, but I'm sure he could give you some more context.
That'd be great. Thanks, Aaron.
Rory, can we see if the podium's on?
Testing?
There we go.
Right. So the primary difference between prototypes 1 and prototype 3, there's a number of them. There's the income difference, as you mentioned. So you have a mix of incomes. You've got a small number of units at 80% of AMI, and then the remainder mostly at 120%. You also have two different building forms. So prototype 3 is much more efficient. So it's generally designed as a street-loaded product where all the units are facing the street with limited parking, limited internal circulation. So it's a much more efficient product. You're not paying as much for paving and unutilized space, and you have a larger yield compared to the site size. So those are two of the primary drivers of that gap, and both of them are influencing that difference in subsidy requirements between the two projects.
Got it. Thank you, Aaron. That was helpful. Yeah, I think that's my last. I'm going to make a comment now, and I don't know the appropriate place to put it based on public comments I have heard in meetings in my role working for Placer County. And just to your question earlier, Vice Mayor, I know one of the projects that has put in an application, and I think there's a lot of things with that project, but they did apply through a Placer County program to try to get incentives at the 200,000 mark, which is what Launchpad, the Placer County program, is at. So I, take that information as you'd like, but I think just appropriate. And again, that was out there at public meetings.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Romack. Great, astute questions. Anything from you, Councilmember
I do actually have a couple quick questions, and I just also want to confirm, because I didn't know what this meant, and Aaron just brought it up. Do you guys understand that circulation piece? That it's like the full parcel and there's other things going on? I did not know that, so I just wanted to make sure we were clear. That's why prototype 3 is like tighter. Yeah. Great. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And yes, there are 8 million machinations of this thing that we went through. And luckily, you guys didn't have to sit through the 8 hours to get to that. So we kind of hopefully saved you all some time by working through all of those. My quick questions are mostly on timing. When you go back to some of the definitions, so completed application by planning means it's an approved project by whatever body had to approve it, obviously. Are we also requiring like map recordation? And I guess at what point are we considering a project able to apply?
So my understanding is this isn't like a fully approved and entitled project. It's that the application they've submitted to planning has been deemed complete, that it has all the information.
The application's been deemed complete. I see. Got it. Because that was going to be my next question, because we want a complete application. So if funds are awarded throughout the decision-making process, said project can say, we've completed an application to homegrown housing, and that's part of our strategy, and that's where we want to do all of this. So we're allowing a path for that to take place, right?
Yes. So theoretically, you can apply some point between having an application deemed complete by planning, a planning application deemed complete by planning, up to, I don't know, construction. So there's a wide range of time that they can apply, but we through going through this process, we've determined that it's a lot more useful for the program operator and program administrator to have a more thoroughly designed project than just, say, a pre-app or an idea.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. I was just clarifying what we meant by, I guess I just read it slightly wrong. So
there's a lot of application in the words.
Yes.
So yeah.
And then I think you had one more, which was timing of application is post entitlement, or would that was just timing of award?
So the project milestones, these are after they've been approved for the program,
Right.
but showing that the project is moving forward, that it's not just sitting there, not making any steps towards construction.
Right. And what I didn't see is when we are actually going to release those funds. Is that the piece that's missing?
The funds are released on certificate of occupancy.
Certificate of occupancy. Wonderful. Great. Those are all my questions.
Great, thank you. I don't have any additional questions. If it's okay with my fellow council members, I'd like to take public comment, and then we'll take a quick break. Okay. So if there's anybody that is interested in providing public comment on this agenda item, I invite you to the podium. Don't all rush at once. Come on up. You have 3 minutes. The timer is over here, and obviously make sure the microphone is on.
Brian Helm, Paradigm 8. Thanks again to staff and everyone for participating in this. It's a lot of really awesome stuff. Sorry for being late and submitting my comment. I was honestly running all of these numbers through our development models today, our debt models, our just sort of return models, making sure that it would work. I'll sort of distill my comment down to a couple of sentences, and then I'll try to provide some ad lib comments. We support sort of this shift to per bedroom incentive credits because we think it creates sort of economic parity between all bedroom types, such that the projects can just respond to what the market needs or what council gives direction on or end user or site requires. So we think that that's a good approach, whereby a flat rate sort of, I think, inadvertently incentivizes developers to keep providing studios and ones like Edmonds was, and not addressing the 2-bedroom. Based on my numbers, I sort of do the analysis different from BAE. I think the incentive levels are appropriate to bridge feasibility. They work for our existing project. They work for one we're working on right now. It's not to say that it's easy. Developers are still going to have to be very efficient and resourceful in how they do this. But we think that it will work. And on a related note, I think that the proposed 16% incentive is really impactful for the larger units. So the 2-bedroom, I think it really brings more parity to that and really creates more opportunity for the 80% unit. On the 2-bedroom, it's pretty good for the one and least impactful on the studio, as you would imagine, because it's only $16,000 difference. So like I said, I've sort of run these through all our different models, and they seem to work. It does not fix broken projects. If you didn't do a project that was sort of thoughtful from the beginning, this isn't going to fix it. You really need to sort of think about this from the beginning. The thing that it does when we ran it through, so our project we're working on, not Edmonds, the next one, that was all studios and ones when we looked at the original homegrown housing. This lets us sort of do a 20% studio, 50% 1-bedroom, 30% 2-bedroom, and sort of have economic parity to the old program with just studios and ones. I think this works for sale, by the way. I think for sale has a different challenge, which is down payment assistance. So it's just a different program that the buyer will have to bring to the table, which oftentimes is an impediment to affordable for sale product. On the timing, the one question I just had was just on the first inspection, just being sort of thoughtful about the fact that our development cycle is sort of lumpy, and sometimes we have a grading moratorium. So that's, I ran a bunch of numbers, happy to answer any questions, but I think this is really awesome, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Holm. Any other question or comments from the public? Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind sticking around, we might have some additional questions, Brian, but let's go ahead and take a very quick 5-minute break, and we'll come back and deliberate this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have all council members back at the dais, please?
I don't know. There was no hand. I'm just trying to pass them on.
Okay, we're going to restart this meeting. Lynn, thank you so much. It's a very complex issue with a lot of numbers and percentages and dollars and values and concepts. So really appreciate that. And as she explained, I asked to kind of break this up into slightly more digestible segments because there are a lot of questions that they're asking us to answer up here. But first, I wanted to see if our representative, Councilmember Pallavi, wanted to kick us off with some general thoughts on this topic, and then we'll go to each council member to answer these questions by group.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. And I don't have a ton to say, and I will try to be as absolutely brief as I can. And to say that everything that you all have brought up in all of your questions are amazing. And we've kind of tried to go through, as I said earlier, just about every combination of how to make this work and how to not misuse public funds, how to be really targeted and effective, how to capitalize on scarce resources at the end of the day, and how to, as you guys have heard me say, sort of consciously develop these site-constrained parcels that we have left and not create more problems than we're actually trying to solve, right? And that's from a physical infrastructure standpoint, whether it's parking, snow removal, doesn't matter. So is this perfect? So, and then all I would add is that I was laughing at my own notes when Councilmember Romack, I think, started asking these questions, because I literally in my own notes have 5 different options for what we kept batting around the room during these meetings. Do we want to make it square footage based? How much? Is it going to be per door? Is it going to be based on bedroom? What's the right combination? And I think where we've ended up, and this was a really just a great opportunity for staff, for the development community, for people way smarter and well-versed than I will ever be in some of the intricacies of how this gets done, to sort of speak freely and honestly. And when we had Aaron join us in this last meeting, I think he saw that, right? I think you saw how sort of freewheeling this group was to get us to where staff is comfortable bringing it back to us at this point. I also want to say, yes, the funding piece is absolutely integral to whatever happens here. And the strategy is to say, let's decouple them on purpose. Let's not let funding misguide or constrain the opportunity. Let's let the opportunity speak for itself and then come back and figure out how to fund it later. And honestly, that's a history of what we've all done up here. So I might not have agreed with that the first time it was presented to me in that form, but it's really grown on me, and it makes a ton of sense for the order for which we need to take this. I think the last piece that is really valuable to keep in mind is that we have some talented people who are willing to take some chances and continue to pioneer and be guinea pigs in programs like this that we put out there. And sort of as I was saying before, until we have unlimited dollars, it's going to be hard to hit every button and every for sale and for rent project and to close every affordability gap. So I would almost say, somewhat consciously and purposefully, it's a goal to as Brian said in his public comment, to not just create a project that was marginally bad and sort of like cover their costs to have a marginally bad project go forward. It's really an incentive to get a great project on the ground in a way that utilizes the site really specifically. And to your comments, Vice Mayor Henderson, the development code updates, I think that's sort of like going to just help with some of the constraints that we continually hear both at the Planning Commission with all of these projects, right? It's going to satisfy a few of those things. It's not going to solve the design problem of a bad project on a too small a site, which is too often sort of what we're getting. So I would leave it at that. I don't have anything else to add from a big picture other than I appreciate everybody's time and effort that went into this, sharing pro formas, putting different formulas on the table, and then finally bringing the funding data that was the kind of the last critical piece to get there. And I was disappointed too, because the funding conversation was only like a couple pages on a draft report, and this part was this very very elaborate playing of these different prototypes. So hopefully we'll get that report out soon and be able to take step 2 should we approve of step 1 tonight.
Great. Thank you for that summary and background, and thank you for your service on this program and being our representative. I know that was a really detailed and involved process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump around a little bit to make sure we hear from all sides up here. So Councilmember Romack, would you like to kick us off and provide us as best you can feedback on the first 4 questions? And then, because I feel like the questions 5, 6, and 7 are much more deliberative, so we'll break those off.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Councilmember Pallavi, staff, community members, BAE that have been involved. I know that's not answering a question, but again, just a great process of bringing lots of great minds together. And I'd love to hear, Councilmember Pallavi, that you said all the conversations that happened, and appreciate you sharing. Yeah, we talked about a lot of that, so that's very, very helpful. And then also just, I remember our general plan conversations, and again, there was conversations around wanting to see the types of projects that fit with our community character, and we have to design this town density bonus program. And so I appreciate, Jen, you bringing it back to, we found that doesn't really make sense, and so we're looking at other things. So again, bringing it back to, this also came from the community in our general plan of how do we incentivize the types of development that we all would like to see that will house our local workforce. So with that said, I'm going to go in reverse order. For closing current program applications, March 31st, yes, makes total sense. I really like the milestone language. I think that's great to have parameters and ensure these are projects that are moving forward and getting built, going through the process. So I think those are all great, as well as number 2, to have a complete planning application. Again, let's commit dollars to applications, again, that are good projects that people have done their due diligence and are ready, to move forward in the process. Number 1, I guess this is one still I'm a little bit, as I brought up in my questions, of kind of why not include the whole town. And, Lynn, can you put the map back up? And, Councilmember Pallavi, in your comments that you just made, you said, we have a lot of site constraints now, and really looking at certain things. And that went to my question around duplexes. And, are we getting to a point where, it's smaller units and they might fit in some of these other places? And I guess I still kind of struggle with the 3 spots in Tahoe Donner. I know that those were part of our screening analysis and we've identified those. But when we're talking smaller units, it would seem silly we could build one, off Northwoods Boulevard there, but right above the line, just north, we couldn't. So I guess I'm struggling a little of why not cast a wide net to start and just allow it in the whole town and see what happens. But I also hear, we're going to have limited resources. So does it make sense to focus on the places we've already kind of identified? And if we're not getting traction in those places, our council and our staff are great at iterating and then coming back and saying, all right, let's open it up. So, I guess I don't feel strongly we have to open it up at this time, but it's just something that I thought worth at least considering.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Zabriskie?
Can you bring back the list, the 1 through 7? Thank you. Yeah, I don't have any strong feelings on 4, 3, or 2. I'm deferring to staff. I read what they reported, and I'm going to defer to their judgment on that. On the revised boundaries, I think the public transportation and the core services in Donner Lake and Glenshire are inadequate. And the Truckee Connect's the only public transportation to those areas, and that's still very expensive and in some ways very much an experimental program. I don't want to rely on that continuing. Donner Lake seems to be, at least according to the people that live there, and I can be corrected, already built out as much as anyone wants out there. And so I would go with the other boundaries, but not Donner Lake or Glenshire, and I guess for that matter, Tahoe Donner.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go back over to Councilmember Pallavi. You want to weigh in on these?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with all of them. Honestly, the VMT map was really a compromise, I would say, at least as it came out of the committee. I think it was, I don't remember who proposed it, but it aligned with all of our other climate action planning goals. So to me, it made perfect sense to align our housing policy with our VMT goals. And that seemed like an easy place to start because we had already identified those locations. So I am opposed to what Councilmember Zabriskie is saying because at the very minimum, the Glenshire and Donner Lake parcels, it might be built out to what anybody wants, but that doesn't take into account anybody else's property rights, A. And B, it's their existing service centers, their neighborhood service centers, their neighborhood mixed-use service centers. So regardless of having a bus line through them, which I just don't foresee us having a lot of bus lines moving into the future either. So as uncertain as TART Connect may or may not be, I'm not sure a fixed bus route in the traditional sense is also quite certain in this day and age. So to me, this was just an alignment of climate policy with housing policy. And to Councilmember Romack's comments, I fully agree with you. I think many times we were all just like, just open it up to everything. But there was a concern that we would be sort of, it's not that a duplex is bad. It's more the question of if we really want to move the needle, is a duplex moving the needle in the way that this program is really envisioned? And I think when you look at the prototypes examined, there weren't any duplexes, right? We were at minimum. I mean, Edmonds Loft is trying to squeeze in 12 units on barely an acre. So I think we were going for scale, and that's sort of where the scale is going to happen, or it's where it's going to be most appropriate. And then also, I agree with you. If it doesn't work and we got something else somewhere else, great, let's figure it out and we'll get it funded. But at least for the time being, until we have the funding mechanism dialed, I have a feeling our monies are going to be subscribed to quite quickly based on the interest we've seen. So I'm okay with everything.
Okay, can I just have you clarify what you meant by, you said something about property rights were impacted?
I was just riffing off of what Councilmember Zabriskie said. People who live at Donner Lake think it's fine and it's all built out. And that's might be true. That might be their sentiment. but it isn't necessarily their reality. That's all I was commenting on. Like, there are plenty of parcels at Donner Lake that can still be improved, built upon, whatever. It's just if somebody might feel like it's built out, that's all.
Yeah, I'm just saying there would be local opposition. I don't mean to implicate the Fifth Amendment of the
Precisely,
Constitution.
yeah. Yes, there will be opposition, but as we've seen, there will likely be opposition no matter what, wherever at some point. So.
And most our policies are directed towards infill housing and reducing traffic.
Yeah.
Which go
I'm not.
hand in
I don't
hand.
think we're disagreeing. I was more just commenting that I think it's appropriate as it's already been in the VMT screening area to keep it that way. That's all.
Thank you for that clarity. Vice Mayor Henderson.
Okay, thank you. I agree with and really appreciate Councilmember Romack's comments on the program boundaries and how just with limited sites, it could be beneficial to extend it townwide. That said, I do think what is proposed in the staff report aligns really well with our council priorities for connectivity, housing, sustainability, close to transit and core services. In some areas in town, just they simply aren't as well aligned, but I'm willing to be flexible on this. On program administration, I support the requirement for a complete planning application. I think we have to be very clear on what that actually means for folks and as we communicate this out. And on the March 31st deadline for clarity on when the current program will close. And then the milestone requirements seem reasonable and necessary. Sorry, I took the third and fourth out of order.
No problem. I got you. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any issues, or I feel like the planning application should be complete and the milestone language is appropriate. And March 31st, yes, if we're going to overlay this and we have to have something else going and something else leaving, or, you know, what we have leaving. I think our discussion here is definitely on the boundary. Yeah, I'm less comfortable with the expanded boundary, probably more in line with Councilmember Zabriskie. I just really question whether or not this is consistent with what we're trying to do in terms of building high density, especially Glenshire and Tahoe Donner feel like pretty far out there. Donner Lake, not so much, because I think it is still pretty close to the core of town. But then when you start talking about if we're going for scale and not duplexes, then that feels inappropriate to Donner Lake. Like Donner Lake, I think, could accommodate a whole bunch of duplexes, but not big 10 or 20 unit complexes. So I don't know that we're 100% aligned on where we want the boundary to go. It seems like everybody is comfortable, or not everybody. We've got two people comfortable with the proposed boundary. You're okay with it? It's not you're not.
No, I
completely
said I think it
comfortable?
aligns well with our priorities.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got three there. So we will move on. You've got direction on those first three. You guys good with that? Great. Okay, we'll move on to the first four. We'll move on to the last three. Councilmember Romack, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think prioritization of shovel-ready makes sense. Again, let's see what is happening, what are we getting, and if there's projects that are ready to go. I think obviously by my questions, I was struggling with the incentive amounts and the big gap between, well, first of all, too, I will say prototype 2, again, I appreciate all the insight, because I think I envision mixed use would make the most sense and be so profitable, and how great is that? And I think we all might have thought that with, the Gateway District. So that was enlightening to kind of see, wow, maybe that isn't going to be our golden ticket to, housing success. So, just great to understand that more. And I guess, yeah, struggling, I was thinking, would it make sense to offer different types of incentives based on the different prototypes and whatnot, again, so that way we could decrease some, increase others to meet the gap. But I really appreciate all the conversation tonight, and I think I'm comfortable keeping it as is. I understand the need to keep it simple for now. And again, if we're seeing it's not working and all we've got is Edmonds Loft a year from now, which will still be awesome, but we're not seeing anything else, then again, we can discuss if we need to adjust things. So, I'm okay with staff's recommendation. Definitely think we should offer increased incentive for lower rent caps. It does seem like we have a need of 80 to 120% AMI. So if we can incentivize more of those units, I think that'd be great. And then really appreciate, Lynn, your comments on my questions around household size and average income versus not. I think back to 10 years ago when I was living, there was 5 of us in a 3-bedroom house and we were all unrelated adults. And so I always think of that situation, but you brought up a very good point that these are smaller units. So you're most likely not having a lot of those cases in more single couples, small families. So comfortable to leave that as is. So yeah, thank you.
Any other, it sounds like an increase in caps for the lower AMI. Is that the only change that you would recommend for program guidelines or anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Councilmember Zabriskie.
I'm fine with staff's recommendation on 5, the prioritization of the shovel-ready projects, and on 6, the proposed changes to the monetary incentives. My big concern is housing dollars overall. Where should our housing dollars go? And what I'm seeing from staff's recommendation and the work done by Aaron Hussein here and with Placer County and before then is the financial gap is much bigger than what it was in the past. There's larger economic forces at work that we're having to endure. Doesn't appear to me that we can just outright reduce these amounts, except I feel I need to have a better sense of what the non-monetary incentives can do. I mean, I'm hearing that they can only do so much, but we saw in the staff report that if we increase the density bonus from 10 to 25%, that might make a $20,000 to $40,000 difference. 3 or 4 stories could make some kind of difference, but we do still have the same issue with parking and circulation that reduces that benefit. But for me, I feel we really need to be looking at zoning changes, height changes, density changes to help lower the subsidy. So my one other comment on this is that we have the lease to locals and rooted renters programs, which I know they're short term, but they are providing housing. They're maxing out in their funding. Then we have THAP. We have more than enough funding because we've only received two projects, or have only approved 2 projects out of a potential of 10. So I don't know if it would mean moving THAP money over into this project or what, but my big concern is the budget. And how do we maximize what at some point is a finite amount of money to maximize the amount of housing? So going with these amounts, 100, 150,000, 225,000, for me, that means operating within the existing amount. I don't want to rob from any other housing funds to advance this one.
Thank you, Councilmember Zabriskie. I think that's a conversation we'll have a couple more times.
Yeah, and I agree on the per unit incentive amount and increased incentive for lower rent caps.
Okay, you would like to see the increased incentive for the lower
That go down to 80% AMI.
AMI. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pallavi.
Sure. First, Councilmember Romack, that's pretty much what happened when I read the report and my stomach dropped and said, oh, we have a false sense of security here on mixed-use housing and mixed-use projects in our neighborhood mixed-use corridors. Thank you for highlighting that for us because it will inform a lot of policy decisions going forward. And that was absolutely my first takeaway. My second takeaway, Councilmember Zabriskie, was absolutely in agreement with you, which is why we're going to have a lot more funding discussions over the next few weeks, which is we have a lot of really successful housing projects and we don't want to rob one to pay for another. We absolutely want to operate within the allocated budget dollars that this program already has. And should shovel-ready projects and unplanned opportunities come our way, we are going to have to face those conversations at that time, and they are absolutely serious conversations, which will take us to our funding discussion at some point in the next few weeks or months. I think in also response to something you said, Councilmember Zabriskie, and this is why I truly think that we're on the right track here, is every time we increase density or we change zoning, we do put ourselves up. Exactly what we were just talking about on part one of this conversation. We put ourselves up against our own community. This is an opportunity to not have to do that to the extreme that the state density bonus is forcing our hand. That's why this is morphed into our town density bonus, but it's not really a density bonus, it's really a funding bonus more than anything, right? So to me, that's really important because we're not forcing a crappy site, which is all that's left, to pack a unsuccessful project with crappy circulation into a site that's not going to work for the zoning that we were forced to give it by the state. That's basically why I see this program being successful, is because we're working in a different angle to get that subsidy without having to create more units that don't fit. We're creating the right number of units that do fit, and we're basically just going to subsidize it in order to get the incomes fixed at the levels that we want.
The right size units that fit, yeah.
Yeah, right? That's the whole crux of what the housing element of the general plan of every single time we have to rezone something. That's the crux. And that's when our community gets pissed off, is when we create something that is out of scale and character with what their expectation is, even though we know we approved it 3 years ago. Doesn't matter. So that's my short way of saying I agree with 5 and 6. I don't have anything to add to 7. And I do think the increased incentive for lower rent caps is a way to see if it works. And I think this program is just kind of like all of our others. I expect we'll probably see it back within we might not, but it will be back within a year or two for iteration as successes and failures are deemed outcomes. So I'm supportive of everything in front of us.
So you want to keep with the proposed caps, or did you want to increase the incentive for the lower caps? Because you kind of said that's...
I might have misread, but I'm fine with an increase if we want to go there. So basically, if
that is the question. Do you want to go there?
Yeah.
So can I ask a clarifying question? And maybe Lynn, can you go back to that chart? I think the two-part question here is, are we fine with the proposed incentive amounts at the 180% AMI? And then the second piece is, do we also want to add on the 16% incentive for the lower. So
Yeah.
it's
The far
both.
right column.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that was being recommended.
Yes, those are the two options. And so far, I've heard three of you say yes to both of those.
Yeah, I am
Okay.
agreeing with that statement. Yes to both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get clarified
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
Jen. Thank you so much. Okay. Vice Mayor Henderson.
Okay, thank you. My takeaway is this analysis sort of confirms what we've expected, that our current incentive structure isn't sufficient to pencil projects, particularly for the larger units. And I would just say it's tempting to optimize for maximum unit count per incentive dollar, but that only matters when the project actually gets built, right? 0 units at 110,000 incentive, to me, is worse than 7 units, 10 units at a $225,000 incentive. Our goal isn't efficient spreadsheets, it's roofs over heads at the end of the day. So if the higher subsidies mean developers can actually move toward penciling projects and break ground, to me, we all win. Empty budget lines don't house anyone, right? I think the $150,000 for 1 bedrooms and $225,000 for 2 bedrooms does seem to better reflect construction realities and moves us closer to making these workforce projects financially viable based on the information we have tonight. And we understand there's a lot of assumptions baked into some of the information we have tonight. I do want to reiterate that I do continue to have concerns about that remaining financial feasibility gap. I know there's a lot of assumptions, but BAE's analysis shows we need $200,000 to $487,000 per unit, depending on project type. We're offering $100,000 to $225,000. That leaves a significant funding gap unaccounted for. I know we have some strategies for that related to the non-monetary incentives bridging that gap, but we've only really quantified density bonus value at $10,000 to $40,000 per unit. So my question still sort of remains of where's the rest coming from? I know it's not necessarily the intention to get to 0 gap, but I think without some clear answers to that, we risk creating a program that still looks good on paper, but we really want to be attracting developers. So I'm willing to move forward with the proposed incentive amounts. And that said, I do want to see some of that additional information. It sounds like it's coming in March anyways on, the non-monetary incentives, how that can help reduce the per unit development costs as we continue to just work on becoming even more pro-workforce housing by actually delivering on the promise to build this housing for our community. So I'm comfortable with the proposed changes to the monetary incentives, including the increased incentive for the lower rent caps. And then I do want to make one other comment, but I can hold it, Mayor, if you want me to, just on the state density bonus exclusion. If you want to get through 5 and 6 first.
I think everybody else has spoken other than me.
Well,
so,
you.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to really briefly address the state density bonus exclusion by saying that we need all housing. We need deeply affordable housing for our lowest income residents. We need workforce housing for our teachers and firefighters, and we need market rate housing. And to me, this isn't a zero-sum game. It's about being strategic and evidence-based about where we're actually deploying scarce public resources for maximum additive housing production. State density bonus, HUD, other state affordable housing funding creates an entire ecosystem of funding serving households under 80% of AMI. That's 1,992 households in Truckee who need housing and have access to established funding pathways. Those projects should move forward. I want them to succeed. We also have 981 households at 120 to that 195% AMI, likely more in the 80 to 120% range, that have essentially 0 dedicated support. These are the people who serve our community every day, whom our residents have consistently told us that they want housed here. So I just want to say that the exclusion related to state density bonus, it's not about choosing one group over another. It's about ensuring every limited town dollar creates additive housing production that wouldn't otherwise happen, rather than subsidizing projects that already have access to funding. To me, it's letting the state and federal programs excel at what they do and letting Truckee fill this workforce housing void that other programs don't address. So I just wanted to make sure we addressed that briefly tonight.
Well said, and I concur on that. And I'll just clarify, I assume you're okay with the shovel-ready requirement as well.
Yeah, I think I said it needs a definition, and Lynn said their staff is working on that, so.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we have consensus then. I am, of course, supportive of the shovel-ready projects. Always bring us a request for a budget adjustment if that means some housing is going to actually get under construction. And I would say that about any of our programs. And I'm comfortable with the monetary incentives. I would just really support council members and to maybe reach out to Brian or some others that could help us understand a little better about maybe where those gaps might be filled. I know it's very nuanced, and there's still some other potential concepts that we could include in this program with some of the non-monetary incentives that I look forward to. And I think that we did just have a comment from Mayor Zabriskie. I just really want you to stay as mayor.
Freudian there.
Yeah, Councilmember Zabriskie about some looking at zoning height and density, but that is definitely a separate topic that will be addressed through a separate process, and we'll see what the Planning Commission brings us on that. Does staff have any additional questions or clarifying requests of council on this?
I do not.
We're all good. Clear direction.
Okay, and this is our last agenda item other than council reports. Does anybody have any other closing comments? This is a really monumental move for us. I think especially after looking at the success of our prior programs and that we're still not satisfied with all of that success. We're still pushing the needle and trying new things and really reaching for where we can provide better service and better opportunity for our community to live, work, and play here is really testament to the dedication of this council and the staff and our community in supporting these programs and funding sources. So does anybody else have anything to add?
I just want to, I think Councilmember Henderson's comments were just right on. And I think you definitely nailed it. And we need to make sure that that full story is being articulated because it is a full story. And what we're doing is fairly isolated, but it's not in forget or disregard of anybody else. It's in collaboration, really, and just trying to make sure each service level is being addressed. So I appreciate your comments.
And the irony here is we're just really trying to find a way to open up housing in a really challenging market. You know, we have above average median incomes, but exorbitantly above normal housing costs for all sorts of reasons: our climate, our tourist economy, our challenging environment, and it's amazing that housing gets built at all. But and all we can. This is the only area that we can really influence. We can't influence our AMIs, and we can't influence the cost of real estate or the rental market. So I think we're doing everything that we can here, and I'm really proud of that. Okay. With that, that's the end of that discussion item. We have council reports.
Do you want to open public comment, Mayor?
We did have public comment on this. Oh, heck. Oh my gosh, did I really forget that? Okay. Great. Okay, Councilmember Zabriskie, are you ready to give us your report?
Sure. I attended the Nevada County Transportation Commission meeting where we extended the contract for our executive director, Michael Woodman, extended the contract 5 years, and then there were just some updates on our long-range planning. And then the only other thing was attending the Good Morning Truckee, where we heard from the Tahoe Food Hub, Slow Foods, and the high school cafeteria. Couple accolades went out to our mayor, going back several years, however, accomplishments earlier in her career in connection with the high school's food program, which is amazing, just a fantastic thing. And for those,
it's actually the whole district's food program.
I'm sorry,
it's not just
it's
the,
the
high
whole
schools,
district,
yeah.
right? Yeah, we had Kings Beach here. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to this side, Councilmember Romack.
Sure. I too was at Good Morning Truckee, and just again singing the praises of our local organization, Slow Food and Tahoe Food Hub, and the incredible work they do. But also, the school district, that it's free lunches for all of our students, free breakfast and lunch. They said they serve more than around 4,500 meals a day, and they're all made from scratch. So it's incredible. And again, I have to say, as the mother of a child in the school district, I don't ever have to make lunch anymore. He just eats whatever they serve him, so it saves me time. And I know he's getting a super healthy lunch. So it was incredible. And then, yes, it was awesome to hear, Mayor, that you got kudos. Just a reminder, you've always been pushing the needle and trying to make our community better in whatever seat you're sitting in. So that was cool to hear. I also attended Truckee Donner Rec and Park District's Not Your Grandma's Bingo. I think you were there too, former Mayor Zabriskie, weren't you? Great event, raising funds for the senior programs and lots of great costumes. It was, rock star themed. The best table was the original rock stars, which was Mozart, Beethoven, folks in wigs. Just, I love we live in a community where just everybody wants to have a good time and get silly together to raise money. So that was great. And then one last item of just for everyone's awareness, next week, the Placer County Board of Supervisors are going to be meeting in Tahoe at Grand Labakan, and they do have an item to discuss a potential plastic water bottle ban. So did want to put that out there. Again, I know there's lots of community members interested in this. We heard a lot of support when we took this action a few years ago. So if folks are interested, I think that would be cool to see it become more of a regional thing. So that's happening next Tuesday, 9 a.m. at Grand Labakan. That is it.
Thank you, Councilmember Romack. Councilmember Pallavi?
Yeah, just we had a VTT board meeting last week. Went over some of those amazing what do we call that? Psycho stats? What did you call it? No, the psychological psycho data, whatever, psychographics. Yeah, there we go. And we get to dive really deep. So if you guys ever want to come back and check all that out, that's a lot of what some of our VTT meetings have just been about, using our funds as efficiently as possible to really target super dialed in a super dialed in way, and using the Placer.ai platform has just been really interesting to see all that. So yes, your cell phones are tracking you, and they know what you click, and they know what you're doing, and there are marketers out there that are using it all really effectively these days. And then just because we have a couple planning commissioners in the room, I got to watch the entire planning commission from the comfort of my couch, which was much nicer. So thank you to our two planning commissioners in the room for your service as well. Great entertaining meeting that you guys had. So good job.
I enjoyed it too, by the way. What was it, 5.5 hours? It was a delight. Real delight.
They did a good job. They went longer than us, so they deserve the kudos.
I feel like they were in training for something. What do you think?
Yeah, no.
All right, Vice Mayor Henderson.
I feel like I have to follow up on the TTUSD food service. My 9-year-old won't eat breakfast at home anymore. Only school breakfast. He told me yesterday he's canceling oatmeal. So, for what that's worth. I have also watched, I guess, no more oatmeal. I've watched a good chunk of the Planning Commission meeting, not all of it. I'm going to get through it, hopefully by our strategic retreat, which is later this week. Thank you to our commissioners in the room. Thank you to Commissioner Toops for chatting with me and just sharing insights and things like that from it. I attended a LAFCA meeting in Nevada City last week, and I do have two big updates from that. So the first is that we have a new executive officer. I had mentioned this during one of my last reports. S.R. Jones, after more than 30 years of service to Nevada County LAFCO, has officially retired. Our new EO is Bud Rice, so I hope you'll all have an opportunity to meet him whenever you get down to that neck of the woods. And then we also had a unanimous decision to consolidate the Penn Valley and Rough and Ready fire districts, which is a really big decision, obviously. The consolidation proposal was actually precipitated by a potential dissolution of the Rough and Ready FPD in 2023, which would have resulted in the closure of that district's single fire district, number 59. So Penn Valley and Rough and Ready districts jointly applied to LAFCO for consolidation into a single fire protection district. The consolidation basically ensures the continued operation of Rough and Ready's Fire Station 59, which is a really critical component of the Western County Emergency Response Network. And it also preserves Penn Valley's existing ambulance rights, ensuring that residents of both Penn Valley and Rough and Ready will continue to receive ambulance service. And then lastly, I met with Jackie to discuss where VTT is at currently. I mentioned that earlier. And again, just really appreciate all those updates. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I enjoyed the Good Morning Truckee. I was surprised at all the shout outs. That was kind of fun. It was a throwback. Enjoyed the Planning Commission, met with Jackie, had a couple other community member meetings, and just really enjoy the fact that our community is so inclusive. And my work at the school district has really showed me how intentional our community is with that inclusion, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. So with that, let's see, we are adjourning to our Truckee Town Council workshop on January 29th at 9 a.m. at Gravity House. And then our next council meeting will be, regular council meeting will be on February 10th at 5 p.m. right back here again. Thank you, everybody, for being here.